Hi guys, in today's video we are going to focus on how the stomatal pores open and close. The most accepted theory for opening of stomata is active potassium and proton exchange theory or active proton pump mechanism, whereas for the explanation for closing of stomata, the most accepted reason is the action of a plant growth regulator. We are going to focus on these two aspects of opening and closing of stomata. Once you complete watching this video, you'll be able to solve all the questions which are asked from this part in the exams. That is my promise to you. So let's get started now. But before starting with the mechanism, there are few characters which are important for you to know from exams point of view. First, you can see on the screen itself that I have marked the inner wall of the guard cells much thicker as compared to the outer wall. So these inner walls of the guard cells play a great role in the opening and closing of stomata. The stomatal pores, like my two hands, are actually the guard cells. This is how the stomatas are closed, and when the stomatas will open or stomatal pore will open, this is how the guard cells will look like. So the space between my two hands is the stomatal pore, as you can see, and these are guarded by my two hands, that is the guard cells. So when the active proton pump mechanism occurs, the guard cells opens like this. The main feature is done by the inner wall of the guard cells, this one inner wall of the guard cells, which is highly thickened as compared to the outer wall, and this is the closing of stomata, which is done by the plant growth regulator, which we are going to discuss today in the video. So now let's see how this mechanism works to open the stomatal pore. So guys, in the plant cells, they have the stored food, that is the carbohydrates are present in the plant cells. So we'll start with the carbohydrates. Here in the guard cells, what are present? Carbohydrates. Now I'm writing everything in this guard cell so that you will remember that everything happens in the guard cells itself. Now, these carbohydrates, by the help of enzymes, convert into PEP. What is PEP? Phosphoenol pyruvate. Phosphoenol pyruvate is formed from the carbohydrates by the use of various enzymes. We don't have to go for the complete reactions or enzymes. We just need to remember PEP formed from the carbohydrates. Now, this PEP will combine with the carbon dioxide present within the guard cells, that is PEP combines with CO2. Now recall that C4 pathway or CAM pathway. That is the same PEP we have over here. So phosphoenol pyruvate combines with CO2 to form a new compound that is known as oxaloacetic acid, OAA. Oxaloacetic acid. Further, this oxaloacetic acid converts into malic acid. Malic acid. Now, this malic acid is going to give the protons. So, the protons will be given by the malic acid, and this malic acid will convert into malate. So, what it is giving? Protons H plus, and it itself converts into malate ions. Clear? Now, these malate ions will actually enter into the vacuoles. Now, before seeing what malate ions do, let's see what happens to these protons. So, the protons will just get exchanged with the potassium ions through the protein channel. So, these are protein channels from which the protons will exit. This exchange is done by the use of ATP. So it is active mechanism. Hence the name given, active proton potassium exchange theory or active proton pump mechanism. Now, protons will come out of the cell, and meanwhile the potassium ions are going to enter into the cell. K plus potassium ions. Now, to balance the ions, what else enters into the cell? Chloride ions, Cl minus. So we have two ions, one cation, that is potassium ion, and another one is an ion, that is chlorine ion or chloride ion. Now, if the question asks which ions are mainly responsible for the opening of stomata, your answer will be potassium ions and protein. The main ions responsible for opening and opening of stomata is potassium ions and protons. Chlorine is to just balance the ions. Now, what happens to this malate? So, this malate is present within the vacuole. Now, this malate will increase the concentration of the cell. The osmotic concentration of the cell will be increased. Now, once the osmotic concentration increases, what happens? The water comes inside the cell. So guys, this is the cell whose increased osmotic concentration is there. Or we can say it has less water potential or high solute potential. Now, what happens over here? Because of its increased osmotic concentrations, water enters into the guard cells. Water will enter into the guard cells, that is endoosmosis occurs. Now, once water enters into the guard cells, what happens? The guard cells become turgid. The guard cells become turgid and it leads to the open of stomata. So guys, it is very simple procedure. Half of the reaction you already know from the photosynthesis part, and I have made already the videos. You can go into my playlist and check the videos out over there regarding the dark reactions where we have C3 CAM and C4 pathways. Now here what is happening? Let's have a quick revision, then we'll go towards the important points from which the questions are asked, and then we'll talk about the closing of stomata. So this is the complete mechanism which explains the first part of our topic, that is opening of stomata, where we have the guard cells which are guarding the pore of the stomata. When the carbohydrates in the presence of enzymes convert into phosphoenol pyruvate, these phosphoenol pyruvates will combine with carbon dioxide, and then after combining with carbon dioxide they will form the oxaloacetic acid. This oxaloacetic acid will further convert into malic acid. This malic acid will release the protons and convert into malates. The protons will move out of the cell by the use of ATP, hence this is given the word active exchange mechanism. And to maintain the ionic balances, potassium ions and chloride ions are going to enter into the cell. The most important ions for opening of stomata is protons and potassium ions. Chloride ions are playing just a supportive role. Now, further, this malate gets stored into the vacuoles and it increases the osmotic concentration, means the concentration of the solute is increased. Since the concentration is increased, the water will enter inside the guard cells. From the surrounding cells, the endoosmosis will occur. Water is entering. Endoosmosis. I have discussed endoosmosis. I'll share the link where the endoosmosis is given, means I have explained, and I'll also share the link for the photosynthesis cycles dark reactions in the description, so please watch that if you haven't watched it yet. Now, once endoosmosis occurs, means water is entered inside the cells become turgid, means they become fully swelled, they don't need water anymore, they become turgid. Now, once the cells become turgid, these are the normal guard cells, once the water enters, they will become turgid and they will open like this. And the gaseous exchange will occur through the stomatal pore like this. Okay. So this is all about the opening of stomatal pore. Usually the questions is asked from the ions part, then the condition of the cell when water enters. So the cell become turgid. Remember, the cells become turgid. The reason is malate ions, which increases the osmotic concentration of the guard cells. So guys, this is all about the opening of stomata, and let's write at the last what is the name of the theory. The name is active potassium ions, protons, exchange theory, or it is also known as active proton pump mechanism. Proton pump mechanism. So guys, the reason I've written the names now, because now when I've explained the complete mechanism, you can easily understand what is the reason of giving this name to this complete procedure, right? Active because it is using the ATP for ionic exchange. Exchange is done between what? Exchange is done between potassium ions and protons, and the another name is their active proton pump mechanism. So this is all about the opening of stomata. Now what we have? Now we have closing of stomata. That is very simple, guys. So we just need to remember one point specifically, which leads to, means the name of the plant growth regulator, which actually leads to closing of stomata. So I'm going to write here itself about the closing of stomata on this screen itself. Now, the most accepted reason for the closing of stomata is ABA. What is ABA? It is abscisic acid. Abscisic acid is also known as stress hormone. Stress hormone. ABA, abscisic acid, it is a plant growth regulator which closes the stomatal pores. Now, stomatal pores are open, the guard cells are turgid. These ABA will now instruct the guard cells to become flaccid again. When they become flaccid, in simple terms, we can say they constrict, they close the stomatal pore. So this flaccid nature is done by ABA. In the conditions when plants have less water conditions with them, and hence the name given stress hormone. So what are the points you need to remember for this part of the stomatal movements or stomatal pore? Closing of stomata is done by the action of ABA, that is abscisic acid. It is also known as stress hormone because it closes the stomatal pore when the water conditions or water levels are less in the plants. So to prevent from the stress of water scarcity, the plants are protected by the use of abscisic acid, because the stomatal pores leads to loss of water in the form of transpiration. Another important point, not related with the topic but important for ABA and its function. So transpiration will be stopped by the stress hormone, that is abscisic acid. Transpiration takes place through stomatal pores. Since the stomata pores will be closed by abscisic acid, no transpiration, no water loss will be there, and the cells will become flaccid again. The cells become flaccid again like this, they will become. So no space, no pore formation for the movement of gases, for exchange of gases, for movement of water molecules in the form of water vapors, the process known as transpiration. So here we are done with opening and closing of stomata. Please like this video, share with your friends and subscribe the channel if you haven't subscribed it yet.